Hey, I'm Jamie, and I'm going to be on the Step Over podcast.
Hey, and welcome to the Step Over podcast, Ottawa's grassroots soccer podcast. My name is Josh Lemoyne. Thanks for joining. Have you done something with your hair? Because you look fantastic. On today's episode, we're kind of continuing last episode's theme of looking ahead towards the next CPL season. Last episode, Eddie Benhin was on. He gave us a scouting report on last November's U-Sports Men's National Championships. Just a phenomenal guest as always. And today we'll be talking with Jessie Porter-MacLennan. If you don't know her name yet, you will in the future. The last few years, she's been the in-stadium announcer for Carleton's men's soccer games, and she's got a great future ahead as a Canadian soccer pundit/analyst. So you're going to hear my chat with her, which will take a very Carleton-focused look at specifically their run in the U-Sports National Championship, where, spoiler alert, they lost in the finals on penalty kicks. But there is so much talent on that Carleton men's team. I needed to have Jessie on to talk about who might be ready to make that jump to the CPL, whether through the U-Sports draft or just straight up being signed to a pro contract. Now, before we get to that, I do just want to give a quick shout out to Evelyn Arsenault and Kira Mellenhorst. Both are Ottawa natives who have been called up to the U20 women's national team camp. Both have been playing NCAA soccer. Evelyn Arsenault has been playing with UConn, and Kira Mellenhorst with the University of Oklahoma. They've been killing it, and they've fully earned this U20 camp call-up. And also two names that I missed when I was taking a break with this podcast, Sophia Cortez-Brown and Rosa Malouf. Both Ottawa natives were called up to the U17 national team camp that took place in Mexico in December, where they played 2 games against their Mexican counterparts, tying 1 game and winning the other. Great job by them. So both the U17s and U20s are gearing up for their respective CONCACAF championship tournaments. We know that Sophia, Rosa, Evelyn, and Kira will represent Ottawa extremely well. Now, I don't want to waste any time. We're going to get right to my chat with Jessie Porter-MacLennan. And hey, once again, if anyone from Atleti Ottawa is listening, these are absolutely free reports on some potential star players, local players, no less. So, you're welcome. Here's my chat with Jessie Porter-MacLennan. We're here with Jessie Porter-MacLennan, whose voice you might recognize if you attended any Carleton Ravens men's soccer games, as she was the stadium announcer at the Ravens Nest. So I'm guessing that you're a student as well, right?
Yeah, I'm currently in my 3rd year in communications and media studies at Carleton.
Right on. So you've been the announcer for the men's soccer games at the Ravens Nest. I've always thought that was like a pretty cool job. When did you start and how did you get into that?
Yeah, so in my first year, I actually, so I grew up playing soccer, transitioned into rugby a bit in high school, and I tried out for the rugby team in my first year, but I didn't make the cut. So I was like, I still want to be involved in sports. So I went to a rugby game, and there was a guy doing PA, and I was like, hey, I want your job. How can I get involved? And he was like, yeah, this is my boss. Give her your contact information. And yeah, it turned out that he was doing soccer, rugby, basketball, and it was just a lot for him. So they kind of did need an extra hand. And she sent me a script. She was like, take a recording of yourself doing this and I'll see what it sounds like and see if you have potential for this. And she was like, I was actually really impressed. I want to bring you on the team. And then, yeah, in my first year, so 2019, I started right away. I did the women's rugby and I did the men and women's soccer. And yeah, it was super fun. And I learned a lot from Richard, who was the previous announcer. But yeah, so I really just wanted to find a way to stay involved in sports without playing. And I wanted to do more than just an intramural, and also sports media is something that I'm super passionate about. So I wanted to try and find work or even just volunteering, doing something involving in game day productions, because it's something that I just am really passionate about. So yeah, I've been doing that since 2019. And unfortunately, we didn't have our season last year because of the pandemic, but I was so excited to get back into it this year. You have no idea.
So what's the most important thing to remember to do or to not do as a stadium announcer? If someone were to walk in and be like, you got to do this.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of as much as it's pretty straightforward, reading a script, there's a lot of things that you can't make sure you don't do. When I was first learning, my boss was like, you never make an announcement during an injury. Like never. Like do not go on the mic. Maybe it seems like good timing because there's a stoppage of play because there isn't often a stoppage of play. Like football and hockey and basketball, there's clear stoppages of play, but sometimes in soccer, like you really have to like time it properly. So that's one of many things. Enunciation of last names can be difficult sometimes too. I usually try and do my research ahead of time.
Smart.
Sometimes you don't get it perfect, and you just have to not be so hard on yourself.
Just plow through.
Yeah, exactly.
So unfortunately, I didn't get to a live game at Carleton this season, so I couldn't hear you in action. But do you have like an announcer voice that you do when you're in the booth, or do you just kind of roll with?
Oh no, like I have an announcer voice. Like it's for the most part, like I find my voice is pretty animated, but like when I announce a goal, like this is a different person. Like it's a different personality there. If you watch a lot of the CU Ravens videos that they post of like goals and stuff like that, like you can hear me in the audio because I'm right beside the OUA commentator guys that do the play-by-play. So you can hear me like clear as day. Like often, like some of the players will send me clips and be like, do you hear yourself in this? And it's really funny. So there are clippets you can find.
Okay, so I'm gonna put out a little bit of an ask for you. Could we hear a little bit of your announcer voice? Could we do like maybe like a stinger for the podcast with your announcer voice?
Stinger for the podcast. I definitely could, but I'm very used to reading a script. Can you give me like a line that you want?
Absolutely, me to say? Yeah. So how about hey, I'm Jamie and I'm gonna be on the Step Over podcast.
Okay, I can do that. Hey, I'm Jamie and I'm gonna be on the Step Over podcast.
So we're gonna put that all over social media now. Perfect. Done.
Yeah.
This is how you do podcasting.
Amazing.
Okay, so this is a soccer podcast, obviously. Yes. And whenever I'm getting to know someone new, especially in the in this context, I like to get to know your history with the sport. And you said you played a little bit. So when did you start playing soccer?
So yeah, I started playing soccer like almost as soon as I could walk. So grew up playing rec, and then once I was at the age of like 10 or 11, I switched to competitive, and I played with the internationals for a really long time. But like once I got to like a higher stage, I was once like I got out of like the rec, I started playing goalkeeper. So that was like my prime position. And then once I was about like 13, there was a little bit of a political issue with my team. Like the other goalie that played for the higher level team, her parents managed the team for free and assistant coached for free. And it was a bit of a like, okay, like I'm like, if I'm not clearly so much better than her, then I wasn't really going to be getting many more opportunities at this club. So then I switched to OSU and I played a little bit of OPDL there, but like, again, at the OPDL level, like they'll try you. And if they can find somebody better, they're going to bring somebody better. And it's just the way it works. And I understand because it is like the higher level at that age. So I did get to play a bit of OPDL and then eventually I went down to the Division I team. So I played for Force White. Yeah, the OPDL team was Force Black and it was Force White. And then I played with them. So I would train with OPDL still. So I was training OPDL, training with my team and doing goalie training on top of that. And so I did that for quite a few years. And then once I got into my 10th grade in high school, I started playing rugby and I was struggling to play for a team that was constantly losing. And I was getting to an age where it was like, might as well like try something new. So then I transitioned a bit into rugby, but like this PA job and like the Carleton men's soccer team has really brought like my passion back for soccer. Like it had died a little bit after like playing for a team for so long that just like constantly lost. And it was just like consuming all my time training, like it gets to a point where you're like, you almost lose the love for it because you're like, oh, like it's so time consuming. And like, you just get like, I don't know how to explain it, but you know what I mean? It tears you down a little bit when you're not doing it so much for like the love of it. Like
it just takes the fun out of it.
It takes the fun out of it. Exactly. And like the Carleton men's soccer team, like they've just brought in like this passion in me for soccer back out again because they're just such a joy to watch. But yeah, so I was a goalkeeper for most of my life and I loved it. Because I'm a big talker. So I like to have a voice and a presence when I'm playing a sport. And I had the opportunity to do that as a goalkeeper. So yeah, that's kind of like my background in soccer.
That's fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that. Like, you got about the joy back for you.
Yeah.
Like, have you had like a favorite team that you followed?
Yeah. So I started getting to the Premier League when I did play. And I followed Chelsea for a while. And then I don't know, like I said, when I was playing soccer, like once I stopped playing, like I kind of just cut everything about it out of my life. Like that's just how much of the fun of it was taken out for me. So now I'm starting to follow Atletico a bit more, and obviously university. Like I followed the women quite a bit too. And yeah, I'm getting back into following it on a wider scale because I realize how much actually it brings joy to my life. But yeah, like I did follow Chelsea for a while. But I'm not sure. I'm thinking of reevaluating the team that I follow. I don't know yet. I feel like I kind of just jumped on a bandwagon when I picked Chelsea, and I don't know if I like my choice.
I mean, there's plenty of room. There's plenty of room on the Crystal Palace bandwagon. So if you ever want to join one, that's fine. So you got to be the announcer for the U-Sports Men's National tournament. What was that like for you?
Oh my God. It was just like, it was like every day. Like, of course I did regular season, like every week, but it was just like even more like, and I got to meet more people that work in the industry because they brought in people from Fox 40 to do the, like the video stuff, like the filming and the picking the clips and all that stuff. So I got to meet more people, and like, it's just like meeting more and more people in the industry of sports media that are just such amazing people. And like working in the press box, the only thing that was so sad was that CBC, like, I don't know, with their COVID rules and stuff, we couldn't have the broadcasters that we always had in-house. And like usually they're beside me every time, and I get to listen to them play by play, and it just like adds to it, but they couldn't be there. And like looking at it now, like it would have been a lot. Like they would have had to been in their own room. Like every game I'm told, like, Jessie, you're right beside the play-by-play people. Like, stop gasping, stop yelling. Like, even when I'm off them,
the
like,
soundproofing is not good in these booths.
No, it is not. And you can hear me. Like, the players would watch back and they'd be like, oh my God, like they could hear me in the background. If there's a penalty and someone hit a player wrong, I'd be like, ooh, and you could hear me in the background. But yeah, so it was definitely like, I would say very similar because it was all the same team aside from a couple of new people, but like it was a very great environment, and it was nice to see more people coming out to the games because it was at a national level, because these men are just so talented. Like even boys, some of them are still like 18. Like they're so talented, and they deserve to be watched. They deserve to be recognized because they're amazing.
Like, I wonder if you could talk a bit about, that fan support, because you said that a lot more people came out, obviously, because it's big, the biggest tournament in men's university soccer. Because from your vantage point, you get to watch the games, but like also the crowds, like what were they like during the tournament?
So obviously there's a difference between like a Carleton game and the other games, right? It was nice to see that there are people, you could tell that there were some people who had traveled like very far to come and watch, like even people from BC and people from like Cape Breton, like you could tell people had traveled far for this tournament. And it just shows a lot that all these boys in university, like they have a lot of support. But yeah, like I would say the Carleton games, like there was a significant amount more, like obviously like everyone knows about the Carleton alum. Like they come to our important regular seasons games, and they came to every single Carleton game that they played in nationals. And lucky for them, they got 4 games. And it's just like when they're there, they just bring like an electric like presence that's just like unmatchable. And I think it has a lot to do with how the team performs, if I'm being honest. Definitely has a lot to do with, obviously they're very talented, but it just gives them a little bit of edge, on top of the other teams. I have to say that the Caravans, they had a little, like, I'd say groups of 15 to 20 people that were doing some chants, and same with Laval. Like, I don't know, I find Quebecers are very like loyal and passionate, but yeah, it was, I just love like seeing people enjoying watching the sport and cheering them on. Like it's so enjoyable to watch.
Was it hard not to kind of join in with, some of those chanting.
Yeah, definitely. In my first year when I did PA for the men, they had the nationals was in Montreal, and I actually have lots of friends that live in Montreal, so I ended up going for the weekend of nationals, and I went to one of their games. I'm pretty sure it was the semifinals where they lost in overtime, I believe. I think it was overtime, maybe even PKs. So the announcers that we have at Carleton, Stevie and Alex, they're also alum. They used to play at Carleton, and they were there. So I ended up watching with the alum, and it was just so fun. So I've gotten to experience like what it's like to watch with the alum and what it's like to do my job. And like, I honestly, like, PAing the games is like my favorite thing to do. Like, I wouldn't pick anything else over it, but it is hard not to be like, and I do sometimes have little chants with myself, especially at nationals, like knowing that I wasn't like getting disturbing the play-by-play. Like, I could talk a bit more, but the camera guys were getting annoyed. And one of them, I think, was filming for the teams so they could go back and watch how they had played going forward. So one of the cameramen, he was like, I still have audio on my camera. Like, they might not listen to the audio, but I still have audio. So whatever you say, like, they're going to hear. And then like the last day, he realized he could turn off audio. And I was like, are you kidding me? But I hadn't really muted myself anyways. But yeah, it was nice because I could be a bit more vocal this time.
So you were at the championship game. And my last guest was Eddie Benhin from 613 Sports. He was also there. He said that it was an extremely emotional game, and like that really came across in the broadcast. From where you were, like, how would you sum up that game?
Oh my God, how would I sum up this game? So, like, we were dominating the whole game. Like, it's talked about often. Like, Carleton is a possession team. Like, they often like keep possession and like they attack when they see opportunity, but they will take it if the opportunity isn't perfectly set up. They'll send it right back and just maintain possession to try and make the team like frustrated because they can't even get on the ball. But we got our first goal early in the game, and it was looking good. We had a nice 1-0, and me and the guy working the DJ, Weber, he's a close friend of mine, and he used to play for the team also. And like, we're just like on the edge of our seats. And like at the 80th minute, like we both just felt this energy. We were like, something's off. Like something bad is about to happen. And like, you don't want to bring that energy in, but like, I don't know. I just like had a feeling, and like the way Montreal plays, it's like, so they're very unpredictable, which can be a good and a bad thing. But like, even though we're dominating, like that's the thing with Montreal, like they're so unpredictable that something happened out of nowhere, right? And then they score in like the 88th minute. Now it's just like, are you kidding me? Like, and just out of 6 of the games that could have overtime, 5 of them went into overtime. And so it's 1-1, and like we see like there's like 5 minutes of extra time, no one's gonna score in the extra time, so we go into overtime. And so the first half, like each team's having opportunities, nothing happens. Second extra time half, Montreal scores. Guy Franck Esome Panda, this 26-year-old man, like, of course he can score a goal. Like, has a lot of experience.
Sports player of the year.
Exactly. And me and Weber just look at each other. We're like, no, like this can't be the end. Like, we're gonna get a goal. And then Kwesi puts on Danny, and we're like, okay, like Danny is fast. Like, he's a bit of a wild card player too. Like, he missed a bit of the beginning of the season because he was playing for the Egyptian national team, I believe. And then, but he's always been like phenomenal striker. Like, I also grew up playing with him. He also is from OSU. And I was just like, I know Danny can do things. Like, I think this is a good sub. Like, and then literally last play of the game, like we have a cross in the net, like 2-2. And then we're all just like
one of the most dramatic goals I've ever seen at like any level.
Oh yeah. And I remember one of the players, he's on the red shirt, Kevin Kaba. I'm not sure if you know who he is, but he's my age and he's on the Carleton men's team. And he came up to me, and he was at a different point, but he was talking about like at that moment in the game, like you've just played 120 minutes, like your mental, your physical, like you're drained, like keeping the composure, like to get that goal, like lucky for Danny, like he had just been subbed in. So I think like Kwesi took advantage of that opportunity, knowing all the players are like drained from playing that much soccer, and he took advantage of that opportunity, and he saved Carleton and kept him in the game in that moment. And it was definitely the craziest moment. Like, I can't even, I'm sure a lot of the crowd was like screaming, crying, like it was, it's just, you can't anticipate that, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then PKs. And when it comes to PKs, like you can't really know what's going to happen out of that. It's honestly, to me, when it comes to penalty shootouts, it's a 50-50 draw. It could go almost any way, right? Like,
yep.
All of them are talented players, and like, the classic saying, like, sometimes it's just the way the ball goes, right? And it's really upsetting because of the fact that it was at home and we took a loss in penalties, and it definitely was not the outcome that the gentleman wanted, and it was just so hard. Like, I had to do closing ceremonies with medals and stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to cry right now. Like, we're going to save it for, like, keep myself professional for 15 more minutes. And, like, that was one of the hardest things that I had to do as my PA job this year, was keeping my composure for that closing ceremonies.
I'm sure you were extremely professional.
I think I was. I think I did a pretty good job. And I also, right at the beginning of the tournament, like a couple days before, my boss was like, by the way, like, can you speak French? I was like, yeah, I can speak French. She's like, okay, so you're going to have a lot of French lines in your script. And I was like, oh, okay. Because we never do it. We never do French at Carleton. I think we should implement it, like starting next year, like having French all the time, because we do a bilingual anthem. But yeah, so I also had to learn French. Well, I know French, but I had to learn to PA in French. Like
learn to speak it, like those lines really well.
Yeah.
Like sound exactly like you're straight from Gatineau.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, like, I'm okay at it, but I mean, I think I did an okay job. But yeah, at the end of the day, like, if we're talking about that game, like, it was definitely like one for the books. And it's unfortunate that it went into PKs. Like, I was talking about it with my mom after, and she was like, yeah, it just sucks that it has to go to that point. Like, it's too bad that they can't play until somebody scores, because that's the way it should go. But unfortunately, we don't have 3 hours to watch a soccer game.
Okay, so you've seen this team all year. You've seen the highs, the lows. Now that the season's over, are there any areas that the team needs to focus on for improving for 2022?
That's a big question.
That's why I called in the expert.
Yeah. A lot of it is, I mean, one thing that is going to be hard, not necessarily hard because we already have like an amazing team, but like we have a lot of graduating players this year. I think about 10 or 11, or a decent amount of players that are graduating. So we're going to have to, I'm sure Clay's bringing in people, and like we already have a long list. Like, even the people that are redshirted, like they're good enough to be starting. Like, I've seen them all have their chances to play in regular season because they're playing teams that aren't as great, and they're trying to get people playing time that won't have the chance to play at nationals type of thing. And they have a decent lineup. So in terms of things that they can do to improve to be better next year, I mean, at the end of the day, like for me, when I find that they're slipping up a little, one thing like they generally do get discouraged by is when like a team gets up. And I think it's hard for teams not to get discouraged by that. But I think Carleton also, in a sense, at nationals, like proved me wrong in that sense, because there were games where they were down and came back. And I think it had a lot to do with the crowd and where they were, and it was nationals, right? So that's one thing, is like working on like not being discouraged when they're down. I think taking advantage of more attacking, like they're very much possession team, and sometimes there's just too many passes in front of the box. Like, I think sometimes they need to capitalize on their opportunities a lot faster. But yeah, like Quasi is just like such an amazing coach, and like all the players are so amazing. Like, I think sometimes like A and B just, they don't meet, and it throws them off. And it's like in the beginning of the first 15 minutes, if something is going wrong, it's just, they get frustrated. And one last thing I would say is like communications. Like Kyle Potter, like such an amazing goalie, and like one of his greatest assets is his communication. He's a really good communicating goalie. And like personally, from my perspective, like some of the times, like if the team was falling a bit behind or they weren't playing up to their capability. A lot of the time I felt it was a lack of communication. So as long as they're communicating, I think they'll do a lot better too. But at the end of the day, it's their team, it's Quasey's team, and he knows what they have to do. And sometimes you just step onto that pitch and they aren't going to connect as well as they usually do. And I think they'll find ways to protect in themselves, in their coaching staff. And that's just my personal opinion from playing and from watching. But I know that they're an amazing team and they just have greater things to come for sure.
You mentioned that Quasey's like just such a good coach. There's not many coaches that have produced more CPL draft picks. Not everyone on the Ravens team is going to either declare for the CPL draft. Some aren't, they're not eligible, but they will be pursuing professional opportunities. So one thing about the national championships was that it was such a great opportunity to see a lot of the players all at once who maybe have pro aspirations. And the Ravens especially, like they seem to have like a lot of high-end talent on their roster. So I'm going to ask you to name 5 guys on the Ravens roster who you think could have professional level potential. So you give me 5 names and I'm going to write them down. So just the names to start, and I'm going to write them down. Okay.
Okay. Top of the list is going to be Matteo Debrienne. I think it's safe to say. Raph's already played professional. We know that he's definitely eligible. And I'm not sure, do you know specifically which players are not eligible? I'm pretty sure I remember hearing that Gabby was not.
I think because Gabby's in his last year, I think that means he's not eligible. Same with a guy like Mitchell O'Brien. I think he's in his last year of eligibility, which makes them not draft eligible. But I'm thinking of just like any player who could move on to pro opportunity.
I mean, Tarek Hamad, this guy, to me, he was one of the most outstanding players in the entire tournament. I find defenders don't get the credit where it's due. Tarek is definitely one of them. Scott Mazzotta, I would say.
Okay, we got one more.
It's hard to say. They're all such amazing players. Moses Cafiro.
Okay. So I'm going to go through them one by one, and I'm going to ask you for the Coles notes on each player and what each player could contribute to a CPL team that might be kicking tires on whether or not they want to bring them in, whether it's through the USports draft or just signing them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's start. Let's start with the last name you went with, Moses Cafiro.
Moses?
Yeah.
So Moses, he is a very great player to have for the CPL. He can be a very good right back or left back. That's what he usually plays at Carleton. And he also, I think, could play very well at wing. He's very good at sending the ball. And he also is very good at seizing his opportunities. As much as he was a new player to the Carleton Ravens, he played with Guelph before. And then he was thinking of, he grew up in Ottawa and he was thinking of coming back just finance-wise. And Quasey was like, yeah, we'd love to have you. Came and played on Carleton. Apparently it was a steal for them because he used to start at Guelph and then came to Carleton, and obviously their athletes level there is unmatchable to a certain extent. And every time he steps on the pitch, he makes an impact. And that's why a lot of the times in nationals, he may not have started, but he did come in and he did finish. And he's a finishing player. And I think that's something that is very important to have at that level. And I know he has a potential for it. Yeah.
Scott Mazzotta.
So Scott Mazzotta is definitely one of my favorite players on the team. He's okay. I don't want to get into just talking about how great of a person he is, but on the field, I find
well, let's pump some tires.
He's very kind. He'll always, if I see him at the end of the game, I'll be like, great game. We'll have a nice little conversation. He'll say hi to me. And he has a very warm spirit about him, which I think is really, really great and not often easy to find in people. I don't know, something about him, like it's just special. But yeah, like he's usually playing as a center mid, like midfielder type of like, and players like that, like they help you connect and really make moves on the field. And I find he does a really good job at keeping his composure. Like if he's almost like his touches are out of this world. Like I don't know if you saw his volley goal in one of our games. That's probably one of my favorite goals.
I think it might have been the first home game.
It was one of them. It was.
Yeah.
I remember announcing it, and I was like freaking out.
I think I saw the replays. It was like that might have been the best looking goal until like Mateo's viral goal.
Yeah. Mateo's viral goal.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
But yeah. But yeah, so I find, and I think he also is just like, if we're talking about like elements of a team, like he definitely holds everything together. Like he is just such a diverse player. Like he brings a lot to the table on top of just like being a soccer player. Like he communicates well, he helps send balls to make finishes, and he can also finish. And I think he can bring a lot to a team that not only in his skill, but just the person that he is. I think he would have a lot to offer.
Tarek Hamad.
Tarek, he doesn't normally play center back. He's usually a right or left back. But he had, I can't remember, somebody was injured, and Quinn Honeyman-Wooten usually plays that position, but he's been pretty injured, so they had to put Tarek in there for him. And like Tarek, like what he has to offer as a defenseman is making sure that ball does not get anywhere near a goaltender. Like his head is first to it, and it's often directed right at a player on his team. Like it's one thing to just deal with the ball and get rid of it, but he is dealing with the ball and at the same time getting it to one of his players, and then they're keeping possession and they're moving it. And as well as just being able, just the fact that he can handle a ball, clear it with his head, with his feet, and send it directly to your player's feet is, to me, like, and when you're doing that, like at least 9 times out of 10, maybe more, to me, like, it's just something that really stood out to me at Nationals. Like he was one of the key players at that team, and he saved a lot of shots that could have been made at Kyle, and it was a lot thanks to him. And we saw like that ball he sent to Mateo for that goal,
almost as good as like I think Mateo's touch, to finish.
Exactly, like he knows how to send the ball.
That pinpoint pass, unbelievable.
He's an all-around very good player, and I think he's very much at the level where he could play in the CPL. And that was just, he stood out to me more in Nationals than he did in regular season. I'm not sure, maybe it's just because he was at a center back position. But yeah, I definitely could see him doing very big things. And I think he could bring a lot to a CPL team just with what I've mentioned.
2 more names, Rafael Garcia.
Yeah, so Rafael Garcia, when I first saw him play, I was just like, oh my God, like this guy is crazy. Like, cause he was one of the newer names I hadn't seen before. And eventually I learned that he had played for Fowler before, and he played at the professional level. So I was like, okay, yes, like this is adding up now. And he just does, like, it's been mentioned many times before, but he plays a right back or left back position, but almost as a wing. Like he's sending balls into the box like many times. Like he's a very attacking defender, and sometimes the team needs that, especially when it comes to Carleton. Like, yes, we want to keep possession and keep the ball on the ground and keep it in control, but when he sees an opportunity, he takes the opportunity, and it's usually spot on. And he definitely just has a lot to bring to the CPL. Like, it's been seen before. He's been on CPL teams, and I know that like a lot of the reason that I remember him, he did an interview with the guys that work in the box play-by-play when I was just eavesdropping because I was standing right beside. And he just talked about like he loves playing the CPL, and it was a great opportunity for him, but financially it just became a thing where he just had to kind of like look at his future and be like, what do I really need to do right now? And he saw that he could play soccer at a pretty high level and get an education. So he just sees that opportunity, and he's been a great asset to Carleton. And again, he could be a great asset for the CPL again, too.
Okay. And last name, Matteo DeBrienne.
Matteo DeBrienne. So he was drafted to Atletico this last year.
I think he was just signed. I think he was signed from like on a kind of like a youth contract.
Yeah, I think it was a type of thing where this kid just loves to play the game. Like, and it seemed like I'm going to be training, I'm most likely be riding the bench for the most part. And that's just not something that he's going to do. So he was like, okay, it's time to get into school and do my thing. So Matteo is a player, and what he can offer to the CPL is, there's a list that I could go down, but I will just highlight the most important parts. Like, he's like all over the field. Like this, he's like flash goes zoom. This is Matteo DeBrienne. He plays his position. He's normally a wing. Sometimes he plays up front as a striker, but like he's really good at reading the play and knowing like if they need an extra man on defense, he's on the other side of the field, the opposite of where he's normally should be as a winger. But then he's still capable to getting back to where he needs to be at that time. He is, yes, he plays winger, he plays striker, but he is all over the field at all times. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, you're there? It's like, you were just there. Like,
I think he runs like a half marathon a game. That's what I
100%.
Yeah.
He played the last Nationals game with broken ribs, a separated shoulder, and a fractured hand. Okay, like he's like Iron Man. Yeah, he's
just a gamer.
Really like Iron Man. He, no matter what team he plays for, considering he'll probably play for a CPL team, like he's gonna put his heart into it, and he is like the biggest overachiever ever. Like often, like they'll still win a game. He'll come to me and he'll be like, Jessie, I feel like I didn't do enough. And I will be like, did we play the same game? Like he's always trying to be better, and he's always trying to do the best that he can to help his team out. And he just has so much love and passion for the game that I know that when he does, or if he does play for a professional level team, like he's going to bring so much to that team. And whoever does or potentially will get him is going to be just so lucky to have him as a player, because he's a fighter and he makes things happen, and his skill level is just out of this world for a 2002 boy. Like he's young and he's got all this talent, and he can send a ball, he can strike a ball clearly, and he helps move the ball the way that Carleton does in their possession. And I know that he has so much to offer to the CPL, and I think everybody can see that just by watching him. You don't even have to know much about soccer.
you can just see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like one of my cousins came to the game, and he, at the end of the game, he used to play soccer growing up. He's 33 now, hasn't really watched much, but I was just like, you got to come to one of these games. Like these guys are crazy. Yeah. And at the end of the game, right away, he's like 22. Like that guy stood out to me. Like he should be playing at the professional level, and he doesn't even watch a lot of soccer. So obviously Matteo stands out, not even just from people who have a background in soccer, just from people in general. Like you can just tell he's amazing.
So Jessie, that's all the questions I got for you. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining.
Oh my God, it's been a pleasure.
Of course, I want to thank Jessie for joining. That was fantastic. I gotta say, one thing that I've taken note of the last few episodes has been the quality of work and knowledge from soccer reporters and, let's say, analysts from universities. You know, we had Jasmine McKnight from the Fulcrum, Jaden Dill from the Charlatan, 613 Sports' Eddie Benhin is also a Carleton student, and of course Jessie as well. You know, as soccer grows in this country, it's not just the players that are going to play a big role. The people talking about it too. You know, if we don't have these personalities, these reporters, these analysts, these pundits coming up through the pipeline, then the sport's not going to become what it can be in this country. And you know, each of those names that I mentioned, you know, they're a lot better at what they do than a lot of other people who do get recognition right now. So give them all a follow on social media. You know, as things start to get back to normal, you're going to hear a lot more from each of them. As for me, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining. If you like what you heard, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Or not, you do you. Until next time, my name is Josh Lemoyne. We'll see ya.